do want to talk more about the green steel that you've been working on, because we've been producing steel the same way, using fossil fuels for centuries. But why is it important to really look at and redesign how we are manufacturing steel? What kinds of impacts can it have to make those materials in a different way? What impacts on the climate can it have?
Traditionally, of course, as everyone realizes, and as you've mentioned, people have been using coal and coke in the production of steel, and there are sort of different ways in which you can make steel. The best thing you can do is you can actually find a way in which it doesn't actually require a whole lot of new things that cost you too much money and too much time to do it. So you've got to think about that whole of systems way of saying, okay, well, I know I want to make steel, but what does that mean in terms of the way I bring that feedstock, that material, that resource in the production? So we already got these steel making furnaces. This is how it's made. But what if we could, through our polymer injection technology, bring in that hydrogen directly inside the furnace, but we do it in a way by using waste resources like tires, because under certain conditions in the way those reactions happen to make that metal, it requires a reducing agent. That reducing agent could be derived from coal and coke, but it also could use tires. So that horrible old tire, if you found a way to use that in the making of green steel, it could liberate all these important molecules. So we could get hydrogen, and then we could also get that carbon that you need to make steel. And you don't have to potentially use coal and coke to do that. Now we're talking.
So what is embodied carbon, and why is it important to consider not just the energy required to make a product, but its whole life cycle?
Fundamentally, we're talking about whether it's steel, whether it is ceramic materials and polymers and all of these different materials. It requires energy, but it also requires basically all those molecules, right? So you think about all of that energy that's gone into making it and sourcing it and putting it into a form that makes it functional. But then when we say, okay, but wait a minute, now it's stopped working in the current form, that doesn't mean that those materials and those molecules that went into making it in the first place are not useful anymore. It's not a waste, but it's actually a resource that's just waiting to find another life. And so when I talk about reform, I'm actually saying it goes beyond recycling. So yeah, absolutely, we should do the 3 R's: reduce, reuse, recycle. Those are the 3 R's we should be doing. But what we also have to say is we need to go beyond that 3 R's, beyond recycling, and saying, well, what if it can't be recycled in the traditional way of converting, one plastic bottle into another plastic bottle and so on? So we're going beyond that recycling and we're thinking about reform. So we're reforming its structure. We're reforming its chemistry. So if we're committed to the whole circular solutions and the way we think about how every material embodies those little packets of energy that went into making it. So that's your embodied carbon. But also, importantly, all that feedstock, all that material that went into making that product, that material never dies. So imagine if we could not only preserve those materials, but if we could keep bringing it back to life over and over again. But to do that, we need to actually rethink the way we talk manufacturing.
But I do want to talk about the microfactories that you've been working on, because they're just awesome. But what exactly is a microfactory? What happens there? What's going on?
Microfactory really just started literally in our labs at UNSW, where the goal really was, if the dominant feedstock that we're using for manufacturing is actually a waste material, we are going to actually set up our own modules to be able to, step by step, take that waste through a journey where it comes to life in a whole new form. That's really what microfactory is all about. So the production capacity, the ability to make different kinds of products from different kinds of input, feedstock, and to have that high quality production happening in this kind of modular setup. So it's very much a modular way of thinking. I don't have to have that entire production and mega factories. I could imagine that I might have 1 or 2 modules, and then somebody in the town, next door to me could be making the finished product, and they might have another module. And suddenly we're all part of that local supply chain of materials. And I might send, my waste glass to somebody else in the town next door, and they might make a product, and I might go, well, that's cool because I could buy that back off you. And that kind of collaboration is so important, because when we talk about production, what does it mean in the future? It's almost like that way of thinking that every part of sustainability, yes, it's about energy, yes, it's about materials, but it's also about transport. Why do we need to think always everything must be made in some other part of the world, or I need to wait for that particular component or that particular part to come from somewhere from overseas? Why can't we go, okay, wait, actually, I just need this component. Imagine a whole economy that's built off the back of, people repairing, making printed objects and doing that from metals. And, we could be doing that from ceramics and plastics. And, we have to find more sophisticated ways in which we can fix our products. And so when I talk about fixing and repairing, it's at so many different levels. Yes, we are used to looking at it in a macro sense, right? You can go and get your old clothes stitched up and fixed. So that's one way of thinking about it at the macro level. But right down at the micro level, it actually could be really exciting and allowing us to make all kinds of new materials and products. And that's really what we do in our micro factories, that ability to take that micro recycling and bring it back into life in a production sense to make products that can then go back into our everyday lives